Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel. In this video, we're going to talk about 3 different ways to configure your legs in inside senkaku, the pros and cons of each position, and the most reliable way to transition between these configurations. So let's get started. So option 1 is the standard configuration, and it kind of offers a balance between mobility and control. And the way we're going to judge whether or not the leg configuration has control is how much it controls this hip here of your opponent. So this standard configuration, it controls it pretty well. It has this one leg going over the hip here, and it's reinforced by this second leg. And he's back heeling strong to kind of cinch everything down to really amplify the control of this hip here. So the control is pretty good in this standard configuration, and we'll see Craig use this in a couple different scenarios to finish his opponent. So as you can see, it offers pretty good control and definitely allows for the finish from that leg configuration. And another pro is that it's relatively mobile. So if your opponent were to turn and give their back in a way to defend the heel hook, you would be able to untangle your legs and follow them up and take their back, as we see Eddie do here. So that standard leg configuration is a good compromise between control and mobility. Option 2 here, I'm not really sure what to call these leg configurations, but I'm going to call this one the Heist Leg because Craig has one leg kind of tucked under his butt here and his other foot over the top. His legs are not crossed at all. Now, this leg configuration offers a lot of mobility, right? We could see here, Craig is able to just follow Gordon up and take top position. Even though Gordon escaped the position, Craig was able to follow up really easy because he has that Heist Leg. Another pro of this position is that it offers quick entries into the legs. You can see Craig just does a quick back step here and is able to finish his opponent. So 1, it offers great mobility. 2, it has very quick entries. So it allows for very quick entries into the legs. But it does sacrifice some of the control because your feet are not crossed. It doesn't lock down that hip as much as like the standard configuration does. So we could see here as Craig does that same back step into the legs, Gordon is able to move his hip and free his knee. But again, like we talked about, Craig is able to follow up pretty easy and take top position, but the control isn't as good as the standard leg configuration. Now, option 3, I'm going to refer to as the lockdown position. And for those of you that are subscribed, you've seen me talk about this specific match a few times. I'm not going to go over any of the specific entries. I'll leave the links in the description if you're interested, but we're just talking about the leg configuration here. So after this beautiful entry, you can see Craig finishes his opponent. His legs are crossed, and this foot of the bottom leg, instead of being on the ground here, like in the standard configuration, it's tucked behind his opponent's butt back here. And that really locks down this hip of his partner. So it's very hard for them to turn out of this position, and it also allows for very, very strong finishes because this hip is not allowed to move at all. So this position is very controlling, but it does lack mobility, right? Your feet are all tangled up. So if your opponent were to turn out like we saw previously, it would be very hard for you to follow them up and take their back if it was offered to you, if your legs are all tangled up in that lockdown position. So again, the 3 positions that we talked about, the standard configuration, which is a good compromise between control and mobility, the Heist Leg position, which is very mobile and offers quick entries but lacks control because there's no reinforcement on these on the wedges here around the hip. And then number 3, the lockdown position here, which is very tight control over this hip, but kind of sacrifices mobility because your feet are all tangled up. So now let's talk about the most reliable way to transition between these 3 leg configurations. So typically when your partner is going to defend this position, they're going to tuck their heel and they're going to turn in the direction that hides their heel from you. So when we're working to transition between these leg configurations, we're going to want to try and bring our partner, instead of allowing them to turn this way to hide their heel, we're going to try and bring them the other direction. And that will create weightless legs on our part and allow us to pummel our legs to the desired position. So we'll see Craig working from here. You can see his opponent is on the wrong hip here. And that allows Craig to bring his foot. He's going to go to the lockdown position here. So he's in standard now, and he brings his foot to the other side of his partner's body, and then he finishes from there. You can see as they come back, you can see his foot is out here, as opposed to being on the ground like it was previously. In the standard position, he brought his opponent to the wrong side, tucked that foot under, and then when they came back to the correct side, his opponent was in a much more controlling position, and that allowed Craig to finish with a very strong heel hook. So now you can see Gordon bringing his opponent to that opposite side, and you can see he's really amplifying. He's tucking his foot as close as he can to his own butt, even scooting himself back a little bit. So now as they go back to the side over here, Gordon's foot is going to pop out over here. So this lockdown position we were talking about, that's exactly what Gordon's going for. His foot pops out here. Now, heel hooks are legal in this rule set, so Gordon is going to elect to heist up. So he uses this to build up to a base, and you can see he's kind of struggling here, and his feet are still crossed. Now his feet are going to end up uncrossing. Boom. And now he ends up in the heist position, right? And begins to pass from there. Now here's another entry into inside senkaku, and we've talked about this type of entry and why it was so easy for Gordon to pull off in this video here. So if you're subscribed, you've seen that. If you haven't subscribed, make sure you do. And I'll leave that link in the description below. But today we're just talking about leg configuration. So we'll see, like we looked at in the last sequence of Gordon, he went from standard to lockdown to the heist leg. But in this scenario here, he's going to go from standard, and I believe he does this because heel hooks are illegal, right? So he's using this position to sweep and pass the guard. And the best leg configuration to perform that goal is the heist leg position. So he goes from this standard configuration, and his opponent is not really pushing the action that way at all. So Gordon is just going to go right to the heist leg and come up and start passing from there. So he just goes right into this position that we saw Craig use on Gordon previously. Gordon uses that to sweep and pass, which is exactly what the strength of this leg configuration is. So when you're deciding on where to put your legs in inside senkaku, make sure you do so based on your goal, and just understand the pros and cons of each configuration and understand how to transition between them smoothly. So hope you guys find this video helpful, and we'll see you next time.